They laughed when I said I was chosen, not because they saw the truth and doubted it, but because the truth scared them, and laughter was their armor. I stood in the ruins of their amusement, not as a warrior with blades, but as a soul with fire. Inside, a flame lit by pain, loss, silence, and unseen battles fought in the dead of night. I was not chosen because I was perfect. I was chosen because I was broken enough to hear what others ignored. I had tasted betrayal and wore scars. They couldn't see, yet every time I was brought to my knees, something holy whispered, "You were made for more." And though I walked through seasons of rejection, through deserts where prayers felt unanswered, I never walked alone. Heaven was orchestrating, stripping me of what I thought I needed, so I could rise with what I was born to carry, they thought. They broke me when they walked away, when they ridiculed my voice, when they rolled their eyes at the vision I held in trembling hands. But they didn't know I was being purified, turned into something even fire couldn't consume. The silence that followed their laughter became sacred, for in that stillness, I heard the call of destiny clearer than ever before. They thought I was retreating when I went quiet, but I was only becoming weightless, shedding layers the world had forced upon me, returning to the core of who I was before the noise, before the masks, before the expectations. And though I had no crowd, no applause, no certainty, I had faith. And faith doesn't ask for evidence, it commands storms to part. Every sleepless night, every unanswered message, every tear I wiped in secret became seeds planted in eternity. And heaven was watering them with purpose. I was misunderstood, mislabeled, mistaken but not misplaced. The hands that shaped galaxies were shaping me, not for approval, but for impact. So when they laughed, they unknowingly announced the arrival of a prophecy in motion. Every moment I wanted to give up, I was met with divine resistance, not to punish me, but to prepare me. I wasn't meant to blend in, I was crafted to stand out, not with ego, but with essence, with a voice forged in fire and a spirit too ancient to be explained. The world called me crazy, but heaven called me chosen. I didn't walk through hell to come out empty. I didn't survive to live silent. And every lesson, every loss, every lonely road was necessary. Because destiny doesn't arrive gently. It breaks, burns, bends you, until there's nothing left but the truth. And that truth, it's sacred, it's fierce, it's not for their approval, it's for your becoming. You were not who they said you were. You were not too late. You were not forgotten. You are the whisper in the storm, the light in the wilderness, the echo of something eternal moving through mortal skin. Let them laugh, let them question. Their doubt is your confirmation. Their disbelief is your mirror, revealing the greatness they can't yet recognize. You are the one the storm couldn't drown, the fire couldn't destroy, the silence couldn't erase. You are the answer to a promise made long before their opinions formed. And when the time comes, not if, but when, heaven will speak. Through you, not with noise, but with power. And the same mouths that laughed will be silent, not in shame, but in awe. Because when heaven chooses, it doesn't consult the crowd. It consults the calling. They thought the silence meant it was over. But heaven often speaks loudest in the stillness, and what they couldn't hear was the sound of foundations shifting beneath my feet. I wasn't being delayed, I was being aligned. Every closed door wasn't a denial, it was divine protection. Every time I was excluded, it was a reminder that I wasn't called to sit at their table. I was born to build one. I stopped begging for seats in rooms that didn't see me and started building sanctuaries with my own hands. Sanctuaries made of wisdom, wilderness, and wounds that turned to wisdom. They saw absence, but God saw construction. They saw failure, but heaven saw foundation. In the dark, I was taught secrets that daylight couldn't teach. I met myself in the absence of applause and learned the weight of silence as my greatest teacher. I stopped chasing validation and started walking with vision, not because I was fearless, but because fear could no longer imprison me. They said I was too much, too sensitive, too intense, but that's exactly what the mission required. Heaven doesn't choose the lukewarm. It chooses the ones who feel deeply, love endlessly, break loudly, and rise unexpectedly. I realized I wasn't lost, I was hidden. And there's a difference. Lost is forgotten, hidden is protected. And what is hidden is always preserved for an appointed time. The delay wasn't rejection, it was refinement. I was not being punished, I was being prepared. God was stretching the parts of me that comfort had weakened, shaking loose the lies I had started to believe about myself. I wasn't too late, I was just on a divine timeline that doesn't follow clocks. And when that moment comes, when divine timing collides with obedience, no force in hell or earth can stop what heaven has started. They'll say it happened overnight, but I will know the truth, that every step, every heartbreak, every silent season was sacred. I don't need them to understand it anymore. I don't need their apology. I don't even need their support. Because I'm not driven by revenge, I'm fueled by revelation. I walk with the quiet knowing that what's coming carries the fingerprints of something higher. And though I carry the memory of laughter and ridicule in my bones, I carry the voice of purpose even deeper. They saw me fall, but they will also see me rise. Not in arrogance, but in awe. Because what's about to be birthed from my brokenness isn't ordinary, it's anointed, and heaven never apologizes for who it chooses. So let them talk, let them doubt, let them stay blind to what they cannot yet see. I was never meant to convince them. I was meant to become what they never imagined possible. This journey isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving that purpose always wins, even in the ashes. And in the end, it won't be my name they remember. It will be the light I carried, the storm I survived, and the voice that reminded them they were chosen too. There came a point where I stopped asking why it happened and started asking what it was building in me. Because pain with purpose is never wasted. And I realized the breaking wasn't to destroy me, it was to reveal me. I had been living with layers not meant for my next season, masks inherited from survival, wounds mistaken for weakness, but heaven saw deeper. Every betrayal was a scalpel, every delay a chisel, every heartbreak a hammer shaping something eternal within temporary flesh. I stopped praying for the pain to end and started praying for it to make sense, and heaven answered not with explanations, but with transformation. I was becoming unrecognizable, not to God, but to the world that only knew my former self. They thought I'd stay stuck in the version of me they left behind, but they didn't know that grief can become a gateway and sorrow a sacred staircase. I climbed with trembling hands and tear-soaked eyes, but every step was divine. I began to understand that favor often feels like isolation at first, that being set apart can look like being left behind. But those who carry oil cannot walk like the crowd. They must tread alone, quietly, faithfully, until the day heaven says, now. And when that moment comes, what was hidden will be revealed, what was buried will rise, and what was laughed at will be honored. I wasn't preparing for applause. I was preparing for assignment. Not everyone could come with me. Not everyone could understand, and that's okay. Obedience requires sacrifice, and I chose the narrow road, not because it was glamorous, but because it was mine. I saw visions when others saw voids. I heard whispers when they heard nothing. And I kept going when everything around me said stop. Not because I was strong, but because I was surrendered. Heaven kept feeding my soul even when my hands were empty. And slowly, the fire that once almost consumed me became the light I now walk in. They couldn't recognize the glow because it didn't come from ambition, but from obedience. The radiance wasn't mine. It was borrowed from eternity, shining through a soul finally aligned. I was not lucky, I was loyal. I did not stumble into destiny, I bled into it. And now I carry the evidence in my voice, my silence, my story. The kind of transformation you can't fake. The kind that breaks you open, burns your ego, and resurrects only what's real. And when they see me now, they won't understand how I got here. That's okay. I'm not here to be understood. I'm here to be used. And if all my pain was the price for this power, for this peace, for this presence, then I would walk through it again with my eyes open. Because I didn't just survive, I became. And becoming is always the point. By the time they started to notice me again, I had already outgrown the need to be noticed. I wasn't walking for their attention anymore. I was walking in alignment, guided by something far beyond applause or acceptance. The old version of me would have looked back, would have tried to prove I was worthy, would have begged them to see the light in me. But now I understood that some people had to leave because their vision couldn't hold the weight of my future. I no longer resented their absence. I respected it. Because when God separates, He sanctifies. And what He sanctifies, He strengthens. I was no longer chasing destiny. I was becoming it, one quiet, obedient step at a time. The journey taught me that the crown doesn't come after the crowd. It comes after the crushing. And I had been crushed in places no one saw, rebuilt by mercy in the dark, rewired by silence, reshaped by storms. I don't glow because I was praised. I glow because I was purified. The fire didn't burn me, it branded me with purpose. And now I walk differently. I speak with the weight of revelation. I move like someone who has already buried their former self. There's a calm in me that can't be disturbed, not because life got easier, but because my spirit got stronger. I realized that sometimes elevation feels like exile, and success feels like solitude. Because the higher you go, the fewer voices can breathe at that altitude. I had to let go of comfort. To carry calling, I had to release control to receive clarity. And when I finally stopped trying to force the outcome, that's when the heavens opened. Not with thunder, but with stillness. Not with crowds, but with confirmation. A peace came over me that didn't make sense, and that's how I knew it was from God. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize my reflection, not because I was lost, but because I was found. Found in the middle of nowhere, found in the weeping, found in the wilderness. I was proof that resurrection wasn't a myth, it was a method. That sometimes the grave is necessary for glory to be revealed. And though they didn't see me buried, they would witness me bloom. Not for revenge, not to prove them wrong, but to prove that purpose cannot be laughed away. That calling doesn't crumble under mockery. That when heaven anoints, the earth must adjust. I am not here to be loud. I am here to be light. I am not trying to impress. I am called to impact. And everything I've endured, every no, every goodbye, every tear-soaked night, was not the end, it was a preparation. I am no longer bitter, I am better. No longer wounded, I am wise. No longer trying to earn my place. I know who I am chosen. Not for comfort, not for clout, but for something eternal. And when the final chapters are written, they won't remember me for how I was doubted, but for how I never doubted thee, one who called me. By the time they return with questions, I will no longer need to answer. My life will speak for itself. The same mouths that laughed will fall silent, not in shame, but in awe, because what heaven built through my pain cannot be denied. I am no longer who they mocked. I am no longer waiting for closure from people who were never meant to understand. The opening, I've been rewritten by the author of all things, and every chapter of my suffering now glows with divine fingerprints. The storm wasn't punishment, it was initiation. It baptized me in fire and raised me in truth. They thought I was just another voice lost in the wind, but heaven gave me thunder in my lungs, and now when I speak, mountains move. I am not here by luck, not here by chance. I am the result of promises whispered over bloodlines, answered. Prayers from generations past. I was never walking alone, even when I felt abandoned. I carried angels in my shadow, favor in my silence, and destiny in my DNA. They measured me by what they saw, but God measured me by what He placed within. I wasn't designed to fit. I was created to disrupt, not with noise, but with light, not with pride, but with presence. And now I walk with a knowing that cannot be undone. I no longer need signs to believe I am the sign. A living testimony that what breaks you can also build you, that what delays you can also define you, that what looks like rejection is often divine redirection. I've buried versions of myself that they still expect to meet, but I've moved on, I've evolved, I've elevated, and this final stretch of the journey is not about proving anything, it's about pouring everything. Every lesson, every scar, every tear is now oil for others to rise. I was chosen not just to ascend, but to lift others with me, to be a lighthouse for the lost, a voice for the voiceless, a mirror that reflects not who they are, but who they were always meant to become. I carry glory now, not because I earned it, but because I endured. I walk with power now, not because I'm perfect, but because I persevered when no one was watching. And when the curtain falls and the final scene fades, it won't be my name they remember. It will be the truth that moved through me, the truth that laughed last, the truth that never needed permission, the truth that cannot be silenced because it was spoken before the foundations of the world. I am that truth in motion, that prophecy in flesh, that quiet storm heaven trusted with fire. And now I don't just walk, I rise. I don't just survive, I shine. I don't just believe, I become. Because they laughed when I said I was chosen, but heaven wasn't laughing. Heaven was watching. Heaven was writing. And now, heaven is revealing what only the fire could forge.